Hello. Welcome to our very first Kandji Demo Day. This will be hosted by myself, Linda Slape. I'm a senior solutions engineer with Kandji, and my co-host, Brian Van Peski, a senior enterprise solutions engineer. I will be running the demo and showcasing everything Kandji, pretty high-level overview of all of the features, which include macOS, iOS, integrations, and our EDR offering. Feel free to ask questions as we go. We will have Brian monitoring all the questions. And towards the end, we'll have an open Q&A and highlight some really good questions that pop up. So feel free if you want to save some for the end or throughout the demo, don't hesitate to ask anything. Perfect. Let me jump in and share my screen. This will be our Kandji demo environment. When you first log into Kandji, you'll see your devices page. This is your main landing page. This will show all of your devices, whether they're MacBooks, virtual machines, or Vision Pros. You can organize them with filters on the side as needed. If you need more attributes outside of the ones listed here, such as asset tag, blueprint name, status, you could dig right into Prism. Prism is a visibility tool built into Kandji. This allows us to get a deeper dive of attributes, whether it's app information, bundle ID and version for all apps installed on devices, or even cellular data for your iOS fleet. So you can easily pull that information up here. And of course, we do have additional filters you can leverage by pulling up the column section. If you wanted to gather information around battery health, device capacity, a lot of things here could be added to your list. And with this, you have the option to export in case you need to make recurring reports or anything along those lines. It's all right here in the UI. All of this starts with going into your settings and ensuring that you have your Apple integrations connected so you can enroll your devices into Kandji. They do populate in that devices page. First thing you'd do within setting up any sort of Kandji instance will be your Apple push notification service. That one is your yearly certificate to ensure that devices communicate to your MDM properly. We could see here we have it associated with our Apple account and their information and when it expires. We also do have additional integrations for Apple, our automated device enrollment with Apple Business Manager and Apps and Books token to push any sort of apps from the Mac App Store. I do want to take a pause here. Is anyone currently leveraging Apple Business Manager today in your environment? Feel free to jump into and answer that poll. If you have any questions around that, definitely jump in and ask Brian in that question section. This helps any sort of Apple admin streamline their enrollment process, which helps with zero-touch enrollment. You can ship a device directly to your end user, and once they power it on, allows them to immediately connect to Kandji, pull in information and library items so that they can get started as quickly as possible. Great. So with this one, we also have other methods for enrollment outside of zero-touch enrollment with automated device enrollment. We have manual enrollment where you can choose to add devices that may not be an Apple Business Manager. Within this first view, we do have any device that may be queued up or has already enrolled via Apple Business Manager. So we have awaiting enrollment and also all of our devices. It's a great way to queue them up and proactively select any blueprints or user assignment as needed. As for manual enrollment, this would be leveraged for any device, again, that may not be an Apple Business Manager, but also if you have a bring your own device policy where the user brings their iPhone or their MacBook, and while it's personally owned device, it can still be managed for company resources such as applications or just OS updates. Once the user selects this, they'll be prompted to enter an enrollment code that is associated with a blueprint. So they can approve that enrollment into Kandji and start to bring in all the library items associated with that blueprint. We do have a integration section for third-party integrations, such as Okta Device Trust, ServiceNow, Slack, and Teams. directory integrations for Google Workspace, Okta, quite a few of them here to be able to pull in not only users, but communication methods, as well as some security compliance pieces too. We will have more of a deep dive into specific integrations in future sessions. So feel free to keep an eye out for additional demo days, which will go into this a little bit further. Perfect. So for our next section, I do want to focus on macOS specific library items. We'll cover a few of them. They're my favorites. And we'll move into iOS specific library items as well. To start off, we'll go into the library. Typically, if you are starting from scratch with Kandji, this will be a blank slate, and you could select the option to add library items at the top. We have quite a few already configured, so I do want to highlight some of just the ones I love most, which I love to start with the enrollment configuration section, which includes liftoff and helps any sort of enrollment, whether it's through manual enrollment or automated device enrollment. It's a great way to leverage an onboarding experience for your users. You can add custom text, welcome your team, maybe some sort of contact information. This will show items pulling in from your blueprint. So any library item that you've set up and proactively selected that device to communicate with. And we do have our help screen here. So if things are taking longer than expected, you can customize this with a Slack channel or help desk phone number. The cherry on top is the setup complete section, where you're able to customize not only text, but also resources for that end user. Maybe it's an onboarding YouTube video or HR portal, things like that to get them started to help direct them while they're going through their first day. Perfect. I know we have a lot of different ways that we can onboard users. How does everyone leverage onboarding? Is there any sort of tools that you leverage today in your environment? Another crucial part of being an Apple admin is managing updates. We have quite a few different methods for managing those OS updates, including our managed OS library item. So whether it's Sequoia, Sonoma, or previous versions, we have those available here to push them out to your environment. With Kandji, we leverage declarative device management. So this is something that when it does communicate to the devices, it pushes it really quickly, caches it ahead of time, and notifies the user leveraging Apple notifications, which bypasses Do Not Disturb. Within this library item, this first portion gives us a few options to choose from. We have the ability to continuously enforce this, which I consider a required library item versus the install on demand, which is great. It's more of an optional upgrade. Some admins may have it set to install via self-service first for maybe a certain period of time, maybe 30 days, and then you can make it a required upgrade if exceeded that 30 days. It's a great way to leverage the two of them. If we are looking at the enforcement timeframe, we have some flexible options where you can set a minimum version. So users have to be on 15.2 or higher, and it only targets the devices that are not compliant. If we choose to enforce all new updates, you have an enforcement window, which could be from 1 day up to 3 months. This is when Apple releases the update. With leveraging declarative device management, it does support local time zone for that device. You can enforce this for 7 p.m. and that's 7 p.m. for anywhere in the world that user is, whether you're in California or in Europe, it will push that update at 7 p.m. So it's a great way to enforce the update and not impede on any sort of working hours. For earlier versions that don't support declarative device management, macOS 13 or previous, it would leverage mobile device or MDM commands, and that does support a time zone. So you can still target a window for those updates. Once you get them up to Sonoma or higher, that's where declarative device management comes into play. Apple does release rapid security responses periodically. We do have this bundled here, so you're able to push these out, usually minor, smaller updates, but very critical updates. So these have the flexibility and you're able to ensure that your devices are secured. One other thing I'd love to highlight with any sort of library item, you'll see we have our settings for the configuration of the library item, status, and activity. If we go into status, this will show the current status of any device that is queued up with this library item. So we could see it's scoped to this device and it's being pushed to this device. Some of them may be cached. They're waiting to push that update. Maybe the enforcement timeframe hasn't hit quite yet. And some of them are pending. So maybe they haven't powered on for a little while and they're waiting there. It gives you a lot of transparency and expectation for those OS updates. And here we also do have the activity tab. This one, great. So let's move to auto apps. Auto apps is a feature that Kandji has built in where we post and manage over 200 applications. And these are the most commonly used applications that we've seen out there. So if we jump into, say, Google Chrome, we know this one updates very frequently. And we want to make sure this one is updated and pushed out to devices as frequently as possible. What sets auto apps apart from just uploading a version of Google Chrome manually is that we have the ability to push out any privacy profiles or install Rosetta if needed. We handle a lot of the common admin profiles that are required for pushing applications. So any sort of profile that's associated with an app differ with different types of applications, whether it's desktop access or other things like that, they will be listed here. Very similar to our options for managed OS, we have continuously enforced, where it's more of a required application. Anytime the device checks in, every 15 minutes, it will automatically call home to the blueprint to see that this is a required app and re-download that application. We also do the option for self-service and update only. Update only will pull in, you could verify via Prism if there are applications. Maybe you do want to just push updates, but it's not a required app, or maybe it's not a business critical application. This can definitely help with compliance and ensuring there's no vulnerable apps in your environment. We take a look at some of our enforcement options here. We could see, just like our managed OS, we have minimum version or new updates. With Chrome, you may want to be a little more aggressive with these updates outside of your managed OS updates, simply because they do push their updates very often. So maybe have 1 week from when Chrome releases that update. Again, it does support local time zone, so you could push this out at 6 p.m. after our updates. They won't be in the middle of a meeting and all of a sudden your browser has to restart. One other piece with the expected behavior for auto apps will be if the application is completely quit out of and not running, Kandji does silent updates. So there's no end user notification, no bothering of the user. If the application is open, they will see a Kandji notification prompting them to restart the app. It's very low lift on the side of end user communication. Some additional nice to have functions include pre-selecting notifications for those users for this application. And for additional customization, we have an option to do a one-time add to the dock. The user can still remove it from the dock and organize. It's a great thing to quickly toss it in the dock, as well as any sort of pre-install scripts. So this can be leveraged if you're pushing out any custom configuration, or if there's a client ID that you need to attach to an application that needs to run after the install. This is a great method to put it right here in this library item. Of course, we do have over 200 auto apps, but we may not have the application that you need in your environment where we have the ability to push it out as a custom app. So if we're looking to push out Cisco AnyConnect, this one may also need some custom configuration, which we do have the ability to push through here. If we look at installation type, we have flexibility, whether it's self-service, once per device, or audit and enforce. Audit and enforce allows you to set some parameters or requirements. If, say, there's a version below XYZ or dependencies, you can push them here. We have different audit template scripts you can leverage in our GitHub as well. To upload any custom application, you drag and drop it here from the developer, set it in the section, select the type that you would need. If it's a zip file, you can choose the unzip location. And just like our auto apps, we do have that pre and post install option. So you could customize, add any information for profiles associated with this app. Great. Last but not least, for macOS configurations, we do have another feature which is called Passport. I won't go into it too much during this session. We will have another full-length session dedicated just to Passport, but this is our ability to connect your IDP to the login window. So the user has one less password to remember, and they're able to authenticate every time at that login window. For a quick preview, this will be what it looks like here. You can customize the branding and add email address options. Let's dive right into our iOS configurations. We'll jump right into assignment maps, big picture if I have all those library items to come together. Last but not least, we'll touch on our endpoint detection and response. So while we jump back into our library, we do have the ability to customize what device we're supporting. If you look at iPhone, we could see everything we've already configured here. What we recently came up with this last year is wallpaper. It's a simple library item, but very impactful. If you want to ensure you have event iPads or kiosk iPads, you have that branding available. This is a company-owned asset, which comes in handy. And with this one, if we hit edit, all you'd need to do is drag and drop your image here. We have different views for what that would look like, and you have options for iOS down below. So if you need to just drag and drop, you can easily do that. So again, very simple configuration, but very impactful for your environment. Now let's jump back into our library and we'll select our device type. One of my other favorites here is going to be home screen layout. So I'll go ahead and give that a quick search. Let me see. That one actually may be labeled differently. So I'll pull that up from this list. And we can start from scratch for this one. With home screen layout, we'll hit add and configure. So this one will be creating from scratch. You can see here, it pulls in all of your applications that are present in your library, which typically will sync from your Apple Business Manager connection that we saw earlier in the settings. This one will sync your apps and books. You can grab any of those applications and then drag and drop them in whatever order you prefer. You could create folders and kind of customize the way that looks. So if you need to add additional pages, you can easily do that. And this is just a great way to have an allow list on your devices. So if things are set a certain way, it reverts back to this look and feel anytime the device checks into Kandji. The same goes for iOS. You can easily just drag and drop these items, add additional pages, and then you're off to deployment. Very low lift for the admin, but huge impact for the end user. Having a standardized look and feel for those devices really emphasizes a corporate-owned device feel. Not every app is available in the App Store coming from Apple Business Manager or just in general. Occasionally, you may have a work-specific application or an in-house app that's configured specifically for your company. We do have the ability to set up and upload a custom app or a .ipa file. To upload this, you would just drag and drop or click to upload. Very handy if you don't have the ability to upload your application to the Mac or the App Store in general. One thing I do want to also highlight with any sort of OS updates or anything iOS related, you'll see here at the very top of every iOS and iPad library item where it will specify if supervision is required. This is an indicator that the device has to go through Apple Business Manager and automated device enrollment. That's how devices will achieve that supervision status, which means you have more control over those devices. Typically, if a device does not have supervision, it's an indicator that maybe it's a personally owned device, or you don't have Apple Business Manager set up. That is something to note as you go through your configurations for iOS and iPad. Great. So, talked a lot about the library items. Let's take a look at how they all come together in what we call assignment maps. This is how we piece everything together and customize them for our end users. With our large organization blueprint, you can see at a glance there's a lot going on. This first block shows us that all devices in this blueprint will receive these items. So this is your more general landing zone, whether it's common application, passcode requirements, things that are very standard for everyone to have will be right here. From there, if we hit edit, you'll see a plus sign available and you could start to add some conditional logic. These attributes either come from your identity provider or you can build them within Kandji or device criteria. All of those bits of information can be customized in this section. So if you have a marketing team that just needs marketing apps, an engineering team that needs engineering apps, you can easily segment those out so you could target those groups as needed. You can also create dependencies. So that way, if they're in this group and this department, they receive those applications. And then it continues to move to the right to be more specific in your deployment. It's also a great way to leverage and customize how we push updates. So you can have a beta OS version, whereas everyone else gets a minimum version of Sequoia or Sonoma. It helps you target specific groups for those OS updates, especially if you have applications that are dependent on a certain OS version, which is a great way to manage that. And if you're looking to add your library items to the blueprint, it's as simple as dragging and dropping it into the conditional block. If there's something that's very common, like Keynote, you toss it in the all devices section. Excel, maybe we'll give that to marketing, and so on. And if you're looking to have maybe hundreds or thousands of devices in a blueprint, that can be a little daunting to understand who should get what or who's in what group. So we have a built-in lookup function. This one here allows us to pull in either a name of the person, email address, serial number, and you can identify exactly the path that device should take for any sort of deployment of applications or settings. Great. One other piece to our assignment maps is what we call parameters. Parameters come from the blueprint or assignment map itself. You can also leverage our blueprint templates. We have CIS level 1 and 2 templates, as well as Kandji level 1 through 4, some custom configurations there. These are all scripts that Kandji has created and containerized here that you could toggle on and establish throughout all of your devices in this blueprint. This is a general deployment of scripts. You have tons in here that you could take a look at. Some of them are specifically for compliance frameworks, but others are for continuous usage. If you're looking to establish a restart cadence, this is extremely helpful. We've built in some logic to also notify the end user, so it's not a surprise when their device does a restart. This can definitely help for general troubleshooting and longevity of the software in the device. Super helpful to dive into those. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Brian in the chat. And as promised, I want to jump into our endpoint detection and response, as well as our vulnerability management. Endpoint detection and response, or EDR, leverages the Kandji agent. So you don't need to configure anything extra. It pushes it out once you have your library item set up. There's no additional agent needed. It runs as soon as you have the configuration ready. As we take a look at the threats in here, we can see everything is organized by the threat ID itself. As for file detections, we're looking for malware or potentially unwanted programs. With this, we have a few different options for how to quarantine them. We have a few security postures, which include protect or detect. If we go into the threat, you could see that we have the item with all the devices listed that may be associated with the threat. If we have it in a protect posture, it will report to us and also quarantine that particular item. If something is quarantined, maybe it's a false positive, or if you're a developer using open source tools, you may need to release that threat event, which you can do reactively right here. It adds essentially to an allow list for that library item that's set up. You can add notes and a release option there. We do have methods within the actual library item under the avert library item to proactively add items to that list as well. The other portion of endpoint detection and response will be our behavioral detections, which will look for typically any sort of unknown malware or any sort of processes that may be malicious or suspicious. And again, you could jump into the threat ID itself. For expanding this item, you'll be able to see the expected process that was attempting to run. This is all coming from the MITRE framework. If there is anything flagged, the process is immediately killed and the parent process is killed as well. And we have a full paper trail of any sort of actions on the device. And while you go through that poll, I'd love to show you how to set up the EDR library item. If we go into add library item, we do have options for endpoint security. The main one will be avert, which will set our security posture for malware, potentially on programs, and behavioral detection. We also have accessory and storage access. I'll show this one first, just so you get a full picture of how it all comes together. With the avert library item, you could set your posture right here at the top, whether it's protect or detect. Same goes for behavioral detections. And you have optional notifications for the end user. If anything is detected and quarantined, it will be able to message that user. So hopefully you don't re-download any sort of malicious item. And as mentioned previously, we have our allow and block list right here. So if you are looking to add anything proactively, you can pull in that hash value from the threats section and enter it here to either allow certain open source tools or any sort of items that may be required in your environment. Let's jump back into the other portion of EDR, which is accessory and storage access. This allows you to customize any sort of access for USB drives, flash drives, external hard drives with selective privileges. So if you're looking to maybe read only on USBs and require encryption, you can configure this here. For each item, we have end user alerting disk images with custom privileges and server access. So if you have any sort of network drives maybe connected to, even if you have credentials to connect to that network server, it will still prevent access based on this library item. So a great way to set a fortress around your devices and prevent unknowns from coming in. Last but not least, we have our vulnerability management. This recently came out almost a month ago. And this one is a very critical part to device management because there are vulnerabilities that pop up in everyone's environment. So this can help you not only identify them, but understand the level of severity. With the vulnerability management, this one truly has no configuration needed. It pulls in data from Prism. So when devices check in every 15 minutes, it's gathering information, displays it here within this list. It will typically organize it based around the score. So with this one, it'll show the severity score of it, the vulnerability ID, things like that, and a great little dashboard for understanding what you need to pay attention to. With any of these threats, we pull in data from the National Vulnerability Database every hour. We compare the Prism information to the MVD pretty frequently, and you'll be able to see devices affected by these vulnerabilities. We have the description of it at the very top. We have an exploitability score that is built in, so the potential of exploit, as well as recommendations. Recommendations include essentially next steps or what we would suggest, whether that's leveraging the developer updates where you're pulling in a new version from the developer. You can pull in information or update an auto app for Firefox or other applications. You could choose to full on block the application. We have a library item specifically for app blocking. And our team is hard at work creating uninstallers for all of our auto apps as well. We will have additional features for the recommendation or next steps where we'll have some enhancements to be able to interact with this section and choose to accept the risk or uninstall. In the near future, we'll have another session diving into vulnerabilities and the newer features available there. Great. And one piece I cannot finish a demo without is covering our resources section. This one has a wealth of information, not just about Kandji updates and new versions that may be available, but it's a great spot for accessing our knowledge base, which is all public facing. So if you wanted to read some of our KP articles, we also have a Kandji Slack channel where a lot of our PMs are available to answer any questions. We also have tons of resources for training and other items. If the knowledge base articles aren't as helpful as you may need, you can always jump into our help section right here. It follows you around on every page within Kandji. This one gets you in touch with one of our immediate responses, where a lot of it is tied to our AI bot that will give you some answers and some suggestions. If you need support from our customer support team, they are right behind the chat and able to answer any questions. They can help you with best practices, troubleshooting, anything you need. It's like having an army of Apple admins at your fingertip because they're just that amazing. Great. I will pause here and jump into any questions we may have, and then we can go from there.
Well, yeah, we're looking at a couple questions that have been upvoted in the questions section here. Linda, thank you for the wonderful demo. A few questions from the audience for you. Is the endpoint detection, endpoint protection included, or is that an additional cost? Do you want to talk about SKUs and what pricing looks like on the Kandji side?
Absolutely. That one is an optional add-on. If you do have an EDR tool today, you don't need to leverage Kandji's EDR. But if it is something you're looking to bring in-house and again, leverage that single Kandji agent, it's a great option. We do have pricing available on our site, so I will share a link for that one as well.
Yeah, we're technical people, not salespeople, but we'll make sure you guys have the resources available. Another question that came in: if I'm using Microsoft Intune already, what does Kandji offer in addition to Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Compliance, etc.?
If you're leveraging the compliance piece of Intune, is that right?
I would look at that as two separate things, right? Do you have your devices enrolled into Intune today? If so, worth noting that Apple devices can only be enrolled into one MDM at a time, right? So as far as MDMs go, those devices would need to be unenrolled from Intune and then enrolled into Kandji. They can't be enrolled into two MDMs. I think the second half of that question is, what integration do we have with Microsoft products or Microsoft Intune specifically? Do you want to touch on the compliance piece?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have a compliance integration within Kandji where you're able to pull in information, whether it's an encrypted device or if there's an OS version. Those parameters can be set on the Microsoft side and pulls in and connects to Kandji to be able to verify that the device is compliant to receive company resources. So it's a great way to verify, especially for any sort of BYO device. It's a great way to ensure you have that compliance piece.
Awesome. Yeah, and let me drop some links here for people. Oh, we got a question that ran to the top here. We're currently using Jamf Pro with both Jamf Connect and Jamf Protect. How is Kandji better than Jamf?
I think that is a question for the ages. We do have a lot of similarities for how Jamf Connect works with our passport function. We will have a full length session that covers passport specifically. With Jamf Connect, that does require a lot more configuration on the admin's part. And of course, with our passport feature, there's no scripting needed. There's no external configuration you need to upload into Kandji, and it's all tied to one single Kandji agent. I know a lot of those components for Jamf Connect or Protect are separate components. I've always loved to leverage one single agent to roll them all, simply because it's less impact on the performance of the device. So there's an admin aspect for configuration, which is much simpler, lower lift. And then there's the performance aspect of that single agent as well. So that's probably what I would suggest there.
That's a great call out. Linda, you and I both have many years of experience with multiple MDMs. In my mind, where Kandji really shines is how intuitive it is to use and business continuity. We do not require any level of certification to understand and use the product. Most people can get up and running within a week, fully configured. And because of how intuitive it is to use, very easy to onboard new team members to your team. Or if you need to take vacation, you want to make sure that whoever's taking over for you in your absence knows how to leverage the platform. It's very intuitive to use, right? Blueprint is your desired end state. Tweak and modify as needed. So I think that's generally how I would say we see the value in Kandji. Question from Colin. So say I have a single unsigned app that was built by me and deployed for only internal company managed macOS devices. Can I upload this PKG?
Yeah, definitely. You can upload that one without a problem. And if it's unsigned, it will still be able to be pushed to the devices.
How do you handle computer and admin isolation where you have one or more agencies?
Are we looking at admin users on the device or MDM admins?
Yeah, that's Kevin. I don't know if you want to clarify that question at all there. From an admin privileges perspective, certainly you could use different blueprints or different assignment rules within a given blueprint to scope who gets standard or who gets admin. If you have multiple agencies enrolled into your MDM or multiple departments, Passport can also handle that as well. We can dynamically assign privileges on that Passport login based off the identity provider group.
Great answer, Brian. That's what I was going to suggest too.
Awesome. Thank you. Can we migrate devices from Jump Cloud MDM? Yes, absolutely. We've helped migrate bajillions of devices from every MDM under the sun, including Jump Cloud. So we have all the resources at our disposal to help you migrate into Kandji from whichever MDM you happen to be coming from.
Yeah. We will do another session specifically on migration. And that covers macOS migration, iOS, iPad, Apple TV, Vision Pro. We will highlight a lot of specifics around what that looks like and potential project planning, the time frame, things to think of ahead of time, some sharp edges you may run into. So we'll do another session specifically around that.
Mm-hmm. Can I delay a major OS more than 90 days? Nope.
That is an Apple change they've pushed out. And with that, they typically require just the max of 90 days for any deferrals, simply because they are working with developers to ensure those apps are compatible as early as possible. We've seen a lot of changes over the last few years with developers being quick to update their apps to be compatible. Hopefully you won't need more deferrals going forward. In-house applications can always be a wild card though.
Absolutely. Usually where that question comes from, right? If you're looking for longer deferrals than that, definitely file feedback with Apple. Let them know. How many Macs are needed at a minimum to get started with purchasing Kandji? Current minimum plan is 25. Are ADE and APNS tokens one-to-one per Kandji instance, or can we host multiple clients in a single Kandji instance with multiple APNS certs? Multiple clients, no, right? So I wouldn't think of Kandji as like a MSP hub necessarily. We do have MSP partners that are managing customers' individual Kandji instances on their behalf. Kandji is not designed to manage multiple companies, not owned by some overarching corporation within Kandji itself. But to the question, we do support multiple ADE tokens. Most commonly leveraged if you got international companies or companies that acquired other companies and we need to get all those devices into Kandji. We do not support multiple APNS tokens. Can you lock or wipe a device for offboarding?
Absolutely. We do have plenty of device actions that most more likely we'll go into in another session as well, that highlights any sort of controls that you have, whether it's locking, erasing. For iOS, you can leverage lost mode. So there's tons of functionality available for device controls.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have those device actions available inside of Kandji. Those device actions can be triggered in automated ways as well. I've seen people build Okta workflows where if the account is deactivated, then that automatically locks or wipes the device. You can do those via API if you have some sort of offboarding automation workflow on your end. We have a mixture of Apple devices, Mac and iOS, as well as Linux and Android devices. Does Kandji have future plans with Android and Linux?
That's a great question. I would love to see a world where we can support all devices simply because the interface is so admin friendly and user friendly. There's no official word yet, so we'll take a look at that in the future. If we do have any sort of announcements, we will make those public. As of today, just Apple devices, but we'll keep an eye out in the future.
Very common ask from people who hop into Kandji and they say, this platform is so easy and intuitive to use. How can I use it for all my devices? Today, we are an Apple focused MDM, but anything is possible in the future in terms of supporting additional platforms. Jonathan had a follow-up to the Jamf versus Kandji question and really comes down to what about Intune versus Kandji? What does Kandji do better than Intune as an MDM?
I think there's a lot more control within Kandji based on the vast amount of library items you can set up and configure that are built in instead of having to custom configure externally and then upload. There's also just the UI alone, I think is personally much better than Intune. It's very admin friendly on that front. So not only is there functionality built into Kandji that other MDMs may not have, but the experience is a million times better.
Yeah, I think that's the feedback that's been echoed from customers who have made the switch. Kandji is much more intuitive and easy to use. And it's automation forward platform, right? Linda covered blueprints and how blueprints work, that constant enforcement of that desired end state. And that's really where a lot of the power of Kandji comes in, rather than constantly enforcing remediation against that desired end state laid out in the blueprint. Question from Kevin. Did I miss whether you can create device groups in order to scope to blueprints?
Yeah, we have options very specifically to connect either departments or groups from your identity provider. So if you have them built out already, you can leverage those within Kandji assignment maps. Alternatively, you can create what we call Kandji tags. So that way, if you have early adopters, beta testers, or even engineering or development, you can create those tags within Kandji and associate devices to those tags. We have plenty of flexibility with that. We will do a deep dive specifically in assignment maps, which I definitely encourage joining. We'll show all the customization and best practices around grouping and what that would look like for either a small organization or a very large one where you want to target regions and departments, things like that.
Does Kandji have N-1 and N-2 options for app updates?
For app updates, if you're looking specifically for version control, I would leverage custom apps. So that way you can target a version that you want on a device. If you're looking to leverage auto apps, you have the ability to push the latest version or a minimum version. So you can, if it does push the latest and greatest, that's typically what our auto apps will do.
Perfect. Marin made a comment here. Jamf does not have chat support. Support is one of the things we get the most compliments on at Kandji for people that hop into trial. Usually people gloss over it. I don't know what your experience has been with SaaS support in the past, but generally I try to avoid it if I can. Kandji support is world-class, right? They are all Mac admins. They've been in your shoes. They've dealt with the problems you have dealt with. You do hop into a trial, or if you're an existing customer and haven't talked to them yet, do reach out to them. They're always available in that chat bubble in the bottom right. They're amazing. They always have an answer for you.
They are. Internally, I use them as well if I need to bounce questions around. So they've helped me out.
They're definitely the brains of the operation. I reach out to them for technical questions sometimes as well. Question from Thomas. Does Kandji have anything in the pipeline for web filtering?
I know we have gotten a lot of feedback around that, and that is something we have been working on. So keep an eye out for our update channel. That is a huge priority for us. So I think that's something that we may see in the future. We just aren't really sure 100% when. Good question, though.
And speaking of updates, Linda, I guess I'll call out updates.kandji.io. that will redirect to the correct URL, which I don't have memorized. But if you are curious about what Kandji is releasing, or if you want to see what we've released so far, right? Is Kandji as a company developing new features, pushing out innovation? All those receipts are available right there at that URL. So do encourage you to check that out and have a look.
So we have a really amazing blog as well. We have tons of different articles, whether it's security focused with what our internal threat intelligence team is working on or recently discovered, all the way up to just best practices around device management, return to service, and other functions that are available. So especially when there's new content from WWDC, a lot of our PMs or people behind the scenes can write up these blog posts to help us understand what that means from a high level and how to take action on these new features. Hopefully that'll be up in a couple of months, our newest version at WWDC. Just keep an eye out for any new blog posts and any insights from our team.
Anytime a new question is submitted, the scroll bar. Let's see.
These are amazing questions so far. I'm glad everyone is interacting so much. Thank you all for being great hosts.
Mark had a question on the EDR side of things. How full of a protection does our EDR product offer compared to, say, SentinelOne or Bitdefender?
Yeah, I think it definitely varies depending on your priorities with EDR. If they are, malware protection, potentially wanted programs, and behavioral protection, Kandji checks all those boxes. If there are some other things very much like network filtering, if that's a requirement, then you may need the additional tools or customization from other security focused tools. So I think that it depends on priorities, and then you can compare the feature list between the two.
It's a very good Apple EDR tool. Keep in mind, we're just getting started. This was released last year, and we're constantly improving and developing the product with new features and innovations.
Customer feedback drives our roadmap. So any Kandji customers out there today, definitely jump into that feature request section to add anything you'd like to see.
Sometimes app providers release tons of updates, and they're not necessarily security related. They're a workaround to not overwhelm employees with alerts. We made a change to our auto apps early last year where we engineered into auto apps logic that says, hey, if the app is not even open, then don't bother the end user. We don't need to alert them to close the application because we're going to push out the patch. If it's already closed, let's just silently patch that in the background rather than annoying them with alerts. We do have logic built into that updating cadence designed to reduce overwhelm of alerts with employees. Anything else you would add to that, Linda?
Yeah, that also was direct customer feedback to highlight the importance of the changes we push out. We heard that from many of our customers, and we're able to implement that into the product. Any sort of notifications that the end user will see, they're usually gentle notifications. They're not typically persistent. They will pop up from that agent and are retrievable from that little red dot on the agent in the menu bar. It won't bother them 20 times a day. Typically will be when they log in on their device.
Linda, thank you so much for guiding us through the demo. Appreciate all the questions in the chat. I think we got to most of them. We will make sure to take these offline, provide answers to all of the questions that came through, and then we'll make those answers available post demo day as well. Before we wrap up here, I do want to hand it back to Linda to talk about upcoming events and any additional next steps.
Thanks, Brian. We will be hosting these monthly. So we typically will dive into more feature specific sessions where we'll have one dedicated just to Passport, one to assignment maps. So it'll be a much more in-depth session around those topics. If there's anything you'd like to see specifically, we'd be happy to hear about that. And of course, anyone who's attended or registered will also get a recording of the session too. So that way you can share as needed. Thank you all for joining.
Have a great rest of your week.
Take care.